Good afternoon, all. I'm Rex Suba, an instructional designer in the UNLV Office of Online Education. Welcome to our webinar, Student-to-Student Interaction, Blogs, Wikis, and Discussions, to be presented by Christine Ditzler. I'm going to proceed to our next slide. If for some reason you need to leave us either as planned or earlier in the schedule, we ask that rather than just closing your Blackboard Collaborate window, please look for the help menu and the leave session option. What we expect will happen is that you will be presented with an opportunity to complete the evaluation at that point, especially if you do happen to leave before the conclusion of the Q&A. With that said, here is our title page for student-to-student interaction, blogs, wikis, and discussions. I'm your moderator. If you do have some questions during the course of the presentation, please type them in the chat window, and Christine will answer them as she has an opportunity during the course of the presentation. Things to keep in mind that are your options during the webinar. If you look above your name and the list of other participants in the participants panel from the far left, and these are located, let's see here if I can kind of help us point in that direction there. Along the line here, where the black line is, to the left you have the smiley face for emoticons and other types. If you do need to step away briefly, so we'll know not to ask you a question, click on the little person with the clock in front of them and then click on it to return. To raise your hand, click on the hand with the extended thumb, and then if Chris should ask poll questions, you have yes, no, and none. And then after we respond to you, we will lower the hand that's set or declare the screen. Here is Chris's introductory slide. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Rex. I appreciate it. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon on student-to-student interaction, blogs, wikis, and discussions. For the online classroom, there are so many things that can be done to increase engagement of your students. And one of the most important is interaction. There are 3 levels of interaction. One is student to student, one is student to content, and one is student to instructor. And today we're going to talk about student to student interaction and how we can facilitate that. In the online classroom, creating a learning community is absolutely essential. Students learn from each other. They build a rapport with one another. Students are limited to what they glean out of their materials, their resources, as they read the book, look online resources, and so on and so forth, and their prior knowledge. And so bringing that all together in some kind of interaction between the two of them, between all of them, is one of the best practices in online learning. So student-to-student interaction is that exchange. It's that learning community that has been built. And why is it important? Basically because students learn from one another. They learn from the instructor, they learn from the materials, and they learn from their peers in the classroom. And in order to create this, it can take so many forms. This is one of my favorite quotes, actually. The community-centered lens allows us to include the critical social component of learning in our online learning design. And it is critical, that social component. Bringing students into the online classroom, sometimes they feel like they're lost in the abyss, that they're not part of the learning community, they're not part of the UNLV family, but they are. And so building a community where they can enjoy that, even though they are off-site, or they could be in their dorm room on campus. We don't know where they're, we can run the analytics and see where they're located, but we just assume that they're not on campus. And so having that learning community is so important. One of the first items that I'm talking about today is blogs. What are blogs? What is a blog? A blog is basically a web log of activity. It can be posted every day. It can be posted multiple times a day. We all follow blogs in some way or another. We may not realize that we're following a blog. If we go to CNN News, they have a blog that has the daily, questions and so forth. That they can post information. They can post updates. If you go to a news website, it's like every 10 minutes, every 3 minutes, every minute and a half, what have you. But in the online classroom, it can be students come in very much like a discussion, but not really. How can it be used? It can be used to discuss their readings, to post what they have gained out of readings. If you're talking about current trends, if you're doing research on a particular topic, students can post their findings, and it is sequential, and it does go post after post after post. It's not threaded like a discussion is. It's just one line of information, but they can comment on each other's blog comments. I have a question, and please, like Rex said, use the little hand to say yes or no, or the check mark. Do you have a personal blog? Who in our group has a personal blog? So only one of us has a personal blog. 2, 3. So many of us do. I have a personal blog, and I have used blogs in my classroom for students to reflect on readings and so forth to share with one another. One thing about Blackboard Learn is the blogs are easy to bring right into the classroom. You don't need an outside source. You don't need to go on the web. My blog is on Blogger. Some people have WordPress. There's a whole plethora of blog sites out there where you can create blogs. But these are contained within the classroom, and so they're behind that password-protected wall, so students might feel a little bit more comfortable, a higher comfort level posting as they do in the discussion, because it's not out there on the web all over the place. Going into Blackboard Learn, the blog it's one of the simplest tools to create. You click on Tools under the Tools tab on your menu bar, and this site is going to open up that has all of the tools listed, and blogs are right there. And you can, if you're not using blogs in the classroom, you can hide the link. If you are using blogs, you can show the link. And then when you click on the link, when you click on blogs, it opens up this window down here. And that little window, the Create Blog, it's in WYSIWYG. You don't need an HTML creator like you did in the old WebCampus. It just pops right in there. You write what you want and you post. And the result is a page that looks like this. This is a sample blog in the Learn Classroom. The first little picture, this is a sample blog. It gives a description of what the blog is, and it posts. And then the next post that I made this afternoon or this morning, it gives you the date, so you see what the date is, and you can name your post, who it's posted by, what time it was posted, and then it says whatever it is. Students can add links, they can add images, they can add all of those other pieces in there when they post to one another. If a student wishes to comment, they can comment on each other's blogs. And so you can get like a virtual threaded blog full of comments where a student can say, oh, I'm doing this research and I found this study. Here it is. Here's a link to it. Here's some images from it. And their classmates can come in and say, oh, I saw that one too, or oh, that's interesting, or whatever they want to share with them. Some differences between blogs and what we're used to as in discussions is the fact that it goes linear, that it goes one after another in sequence, and it's not threaded unless there are comments. Does anybody have any questions, comments, anything that they want to share? Yes. Paul, your hand is up.
Can you hear me, Christine?
I can, absolutely. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Is this gradable like WebCampus discussions?
Can you hear me now? I think you can. Yes, it is. It is gradable, as in the discussions. You can go into the gradebook, and when you create your blog, you can make it worth 5 points or 10 points or whatever. I don't have a picture of the gradebook blog in here. I was just, I guess I should have thought of that. I apologize.
One thing that I can offer, Paul, as a follow-up is we'll take a screen capture of what it looks like. I do have the Grade Center webinar scheduled for this Monday, and I'll see if I can also include some of that in my presentation. It wasn't originally part of that, but I could make sure that I try to make room for it if that would be helpful.
Thanks, that's fine.
Beth, did you have a question as well? I thought I saw your hand up.
No, I was just following up there with Paul on his thought about the grades there, and so we can certainly give him a screenshot of the resulting grade column for the blog and maybe even the interface for grading it.
Oh no, I meant Beth.
Oh, Beth, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I guess not. But anyway, so those are blogs. Another way to engage students is the wiki. Now, what is the purpose of a wiki? I know that there's a lot of instructors, students they'll write their papers and they'll use like Wikipedia and so on and so forth, which, you know, when I teach, I don't accept from my students. I tell them no Wikipedia as a reference. So sometimes wikis get negative press because of Wikipedia. But wikis actually have a great purpose. Wikis are a collaborative tool. You can create a wiki in in Blackboard Learn. It's very much like a blog. Same thing, same procedure. You go to the tools, it says wikis, you click on it and you create it the same way. And then students can go in and they can edit it. And they can make changes, they can add to it. For example, a purpose for it. Since I teach history, I'll throw out a history example out there. If I were teaching, for example, a History 101 course, and I wanted to say, what were the major contributing factors to the American Revolution? I could create a wiki for the students, and they could come in, and student A could say, this event did this. Student B can come in and say, you know, event number 2 did this, and so on and so forth. They can add material, they can add images, they can do all of those kinds of things. And they can build a data source that they can use for their learning, for their notes, and they can do it collaboratively. A wiki can be used for a multitude of things. When you're doing a wiki, you can do spreadsheets, you can do plain documents, all of those kinds of things. If students are tracking something, if, for example, groups. If you have a group and they want to track who's doing what assignments in their wiki and add that material in there, they can do that. A lot of times in the old WebCampus, a lot of faculty would go and use a Google Doc, but in Blackboard Learn, the wiki is built right in. And so it's easy for the instructor to be able to keep track of what the students are doing, and it's easy for the students to log in and take care of that assignment or that task that they need to perform right there within the classroom without going into an outside source. And so I thought I'd throw out there, does anybody use a wiki? Have you used a wiki? And what are some ideas that you have used it for in your own life? Be it teaching, be it personal, be it what have you. Any thoughts? No? I know that we here in online education, as we are transitioning to Blackboard Learn, we make great use of the wiki in Learn to track where all of the departments are going. Because there's so many of us on the staff, we can track what's going on, which courses are coming up the next semester, what's been imported, what's ready for faculty, who's teaching it. We can track everything that we need to know about the upcoming semester as we transition within a wiki that all of us have access to. And when you make changes, or for example, if one of the artists add a banner into the course, he can go into the wiki and he could just add in there that he added the banner, and that's taken care of. So there's a lot of things that can be done, and we use it for, like I said, for organizational purposes. And in the classroom, it can be used for the same kind of purpose, or for building content, for building data files. Another thing you can do is, I've used in my class before when I did not have access to a wiki in the online classroom, where the students had to share references because we were trying to find primary sources, and how to understand what the difference was between primary and secondary sources, and so on and so forth. And so they would set up Delicious accounts. They would have to go into Delicious, they would have to set up an account, they would have to share it with one another, and then they could have, everybody would have this collection of great resources and research materials that they brought together for their papers, their assignments, and their learning. Whereas in Learn, you do it right there in the classroom. You don't have to go set up another account. You don't have to do that. The instructor just sets up the wiki, and the students can go in there and they can edit, and the instructor can track where they're going, what they're doing, and make changes. If there's, like with my example of a list of references, if there were some that were inappropriate, the instructor, I as the instructor could go in there and say, no, this is not really this is a secondary source, or this is not an appropriate source, so let's find something else. So it's collaborative. This is a student-to-student interaction. It's also a student-to-instructor interaction, and it can be used as an instructor, a student to content interaction. So this can cover, a wiki can cover all levels of interaction that are really required in an online classroom. I know that wikis are not often used. Some do. There are some instructors that I've worked with who do use wikis, but it's not common. Perhaps now that it's so easy to use in this platform, it will become more common, because there is so much potential, and it's limited to what ideas the instructor and their instructional designer come up with on how they could implement that in the classroom. The third and final area of interaction, student-to-student interaction, is a discussion. The discussion is the most common form of student interaction. And I have to say, with very few exceptions, in the years that I've been doing instructional design, that is the only student-to-student interaction in the online classroom at all. Some instructors have discussions. Some instructors do not like discussions. Here's a question. If you could give us a check. Do you use discussions in your online classroom currently? So some of you do and some of you don't. As a follow-up, do you grade your discussion? Is it a graded discussion or is it just an open discussion? So these are graded discussions. I'm going to guess that that's a graded discussion. So you grade them, which is good because the bottom line is, and I will say this as a student, when I have an online class and I'm not required to do the discussion, I usually don't do as much discussion, and it's not as thoughtful discussion as if I know I've got points attached. And I just said that as a student. And so I would assume that other students are the same way, that they act the same way as I do as a student. And if they are not required, then their discussion is either non-existent, limited, or minimal. And it's not as thoughtful. In Blackboard Learn, the discussions are broken into forums, and then you create threads in the forums. It's a little different than it is in WebCampus, because in WebCampus you put the discussion and the students just respond to it, the discussion question. You create a topic. In Blackboard Learn, you create a forum. But the thing is, where do you put the question? So let's look at it real quick. When you go into Blackboard Learn and you click on discussion, it's in the menu. It's over. All the courses have the discussion menu already in there. When the IDs, the instructional designers here in online education have the course with the imported content, the first thing we do is go in and we make sure that the menu has the discussion because it is so important. When you go into the discussion board, you're going to create a forum. And when you create a forum, you put in the question and so forth. And then you submit, and you say make it available to students, yada, yada, yada. And it's really simple. And then when you submit it, it shows up like this, where there's a form and it says week 1. But the description is not there. The question is not there. When students go into the discussion board, then, well, I'm sorry, I'm lying to you. The description is the question. When you go into this discussion board right here, like say I had week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, what have you, the description would say what the question is. But when the students actually click on the discussion, it goes to a thread. And they have to create a thread. The question does not show up at that place. So let me go back. When they go here to the board, it says what the forum is, week 1, with the question. But when they click on week 1 and go into the discussion itself, it shows up and it just says create a thread. And students will create a thread. However, what I do, and this is the world according to Chris, though I do believe it is a good practice. When I go in there, I create the first thread. Even though the forum has the question, I create a thread reiterating the question. And the reason I do that is because when the students click on that week 1, the question is no longer there. And they have to go back to readdress the question. Whereas if you, as the instructor, create the first thread and you make the question again, then the students will be able to see that question within the discussion forum itself. And so as we transition to Blackboard Learn more and more, by fall we'll all be using it and become accustomed to it, it's something to bear in mind to make it easier for the students to remember what the question is. And then when you create that thread, Like say you have a discussion question that has 4 parts. The students don't lose that question. They can refer back to it easily. Whereas if you don't create that first thread, they have to go back to the forum in order to see the question again, and they lose their spot. You know, they lose their train of thought. They have to post and then repost. They lose what they've already written unless they save it and post it, and so on. So it's a good practice to go ahead when you create that thread, reiterate that question. In the classroom, since most of us do use discussions, there are 3 discussions that should always be in every online classroom for exchange between the students, exchange between the students and the faculty member. Those 3 questions are your introductions. There should always be an introduction, always. Students should be able to come in, and they should be told the first day of class, come in, tell us who you are. Build that community. Build that sense of sharing and learning, that they will be comfortable with one another. And if they share something about themselves, then it becomes a little bit more personal. I have to say that sometimes I have seen and I have taken classes where the discussion is, what is your major and when do you graduate? And in the introduction, I always do something a little weird because I'm strange that way. But I'll say, you know, what's your major and what is your favorite cereal? Or what is your hobby? Or something that looks for a piece of personal information for them to share. And some students will decide not to share anything, which is their prerogative by all means. But it gives them an opportunity to open up and say, this is who I am. I am more than just a student in the classroom, but I'm a person too. And sometimes I'll get these long things about I like to go hiking, I like to go exploring, and blah, blah, blah. And the students will start talking to one another, and they'll start exchanging. And that's what we want. That builds that rapport between the students. So the introductions the first week of course are incredibly important. The other another discussion in there is the student cafe. It's not graded, and it is where students chat. Hey, Super Bowl's coming up. Go Steelers, or whatever, you know, whatever they want to talk about. You know, the faculty member should monitor it, and if it becomes inappropriate, of course, that is another matter altogether. But I have to say, in all the years I've taught online, and I've been teaching online since 2004, I've never had a student cafe discussion that was anything more than getting to know one another. But they need that place. They need that place to talk. Some instructors call it the student cafe. Some people call it the water cooler. Some people call it your place, the coffee shop, whatever you want to call it. You just need to give the students some place to share personal things with them amongst themselves, to get to know one another. And the third discussion that every online classroom should have is a help forum. And the instructor really should monitor the help forum. It's not a graded discussion, but if you go in there and 5 students, 10 students, 15 students have the same question, then that's probably something that the instructor should address. A lot of times you'll see that the students will go in and they will post a question, and their fellow students answer the question. And so then the instructor can choose to say, yes, you're right on target, or yes, that's correct, however, this is also correct, or whatever needs to be said. But they need a place where they can ask for help from one another. Again, building that community, the learning community, and the student-to-student interaction. So in the online classroom, there are many ways to build that student-to-student interaction, and I know that there are some instructors who have taken to social media, who use Twitter accounts, who use Facebook, whatever. But within Blackboard Learn, which is a protected place because it is behind the password block, and students can go in there. There are these three main ways to engage your students, to interact with one another, to share, to build a learning community. And those are the blogs, the wikis, and the discussions. And all three have purposes. All three have different roles, but similar roles, depending on how the instructor can find areas, or how, the content, the information that you're dealing with may really open itself up to one or another. But it does build that student collaboration, which is what you really want to have in your classroom. And I would suggest that if you're working on a class, you're teaching a class, you're building a course, developing a new one, whatever you're doing, talk to your instructional designer about different ways that you can engage your students with one another. Ask them. Talk to them about putting a blog in, or a wiki, or what have you, going beyond the discussions, because, like I said earlier, that truly is the most common way that faculty members build student-to-student interaction. If you are teaching online and you don't have any of these, then I really, really suggest that you bring them into your classroom, because you do want that interaction between your students. And with that said, I'm going to open it up to any questions, or if you have any ideas, or things that you have experienced, successes, not so successful, you tried something, please. Rex can open up the mic, or you can type it into the chat box, and we'll see what ideas we can get from one another here.
Go ahead, Paul.
Paul, can you hear? Because I can't hear you. I can't hear your question.
Can anyone hear me now?
Yes, I can. Go ahead, Paul. Do you want to go ahead and type your question into the chat? Because I'm not hearing your question. But I can hear you typing, so I know your mic is on. Why use blogs instead of discussions, where they have to contribute to a say about journalism ethics? Well, it's not necessarily that you should use blogs instead of discussions. It depends on what the purpose of this assignment is. If you have an assignment where they're contributing to a discussion on journalism ethics, for example, and having a threaded discussion where a student posts a comment and others add comments to it in one big happy thread, then perhaps the discussion is the best way to go. it depends on what the goals are of the assignment. If you want them to be able to see, just scroll down through without opening each discussion thread so that they can easily glean the information in, one right after another, one piece of information after another, then a blog might be the best way to go. Like I showed you in the image, here, let me pull that slide back up. Up here, if you look at the bottom, there is the first posting, and then right below it is the second posting. And so students don't have to click on anything else. They don't have to open a thread. They can open up that blog, and right there is the image or the links or what have you. And their postings go one right after another, and they can scroll down through. So it depends on what your needs are in that assignment. So sometimes the discussion might be more appropriate, and sometimes the blog might be more appropriate and useful. One thing that I taught a class when I was at the University of Wyoming. A colleague and I used to teach a class online, and because we had eCollege and it did not have a blog feature in it, we had the students create blogs. And the one thing that a large part of this course was a writing course, and one of the things that we were trying to drive home was, if you are going out there and being published in some way, you want all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed and everything's, there is spelled right, those kinds of things. Because it was really hard to get these students to understand in the discussion that they had to keep their grammar, their spelling, and everything under control. There were a lot of errors in the discussion. And so one of the things that we used the blog for was they had, for example, if we were reading, the Epic of Gilgamesh, they had to talk about, they had to discuss what they had learned from various pieces. And when they posted on their blog, the rubric that we graded them on was the grammar and the spelling was at a higher criteria, because we were trying to make them understand this is out there for the whole world to see because it's on a blog. And even though in Blackboard Learn, the blog is within the classroom, and so the whole world isn't going to see it, our mission, comparing the blog to the discussion, was to hold them to a higher rubric standard in their spelling and grammar and their sentence structure to make sure that they could understand how to write. In the first few blog postings, they missed that mark, but by the third or fourth that they posted, they really, really reached a higher level of writing in that classroom. And so that was one thing that was one of the reasons we chose to use blogs instead of discussion. But like I said, they were out there on Blogger or WordPress. They weren't within the classroom. Do we have any other questions, comments, experiences that you'd like to share? Oh, I have one here. Let me see. It says, my assignments, including rubrics, evaluate criteria for discussions are Word documents posted under folders at the home page and WebCampus. Is there a way in Blackboard Learn to integrate the assignment into the discussion area? In Blackboard Learn, when you create things, you can create a link, a course link. Like if you send out an announcement, you can create a link directly to an assignment. If you put in all of these areas, you can create a link in within the assignment. And so if you go into the discussion board, I'm doing it right as we speak. and you create a thread, no, I have to, I'm lying to you here. The discussion forum does not allow for, the thread itself doesn't allow you to add that link in there. And so it doesn't. When you go into there, that is one place that it doesn't, but you can add an announcement or so forth that gives that link to it. So as you can see, we're still kind of learning all the nuances of what goes where and learn as we progress through this as well. So, anybody else? Questions, comments? Because we've got about 3 minutes left. You can install rubrics using the rubrics tool rather than a word. Yes, absolutely. You can definitely attach a rubric to the discussion. So when you create that rubric, and you can add it in at any time. You know, at WebCampus, it was a real pain if you created an assignment or a discussion to add the rubric in later and learn. It's easy. You can create all your rubrics, save them save them as your rubrics, and then plug them in as you need them. Yes, sehr gut. You're speaking my language, literally. So, well, if we have no more questions or comments or anything, I appreciate your time today. If you think of something later that you would like to, oh, thanks, Emily. We're glad to have you. If you think of anything, you can contact me, contact your instructional designer. If you have questions about who that is, you can go on our website, or you can call over here and we'll help you out. We love working with all of you, and so hopefully as we go through this transition, we'll find some really cool tools that you can implement into your classroom for a new way to really engage your students. And on that note, I wish you all a wonderful day, and thank you for attending.
Thank you, Chris. I'm showing your resources page here briefly, and as I indicated, if you do use our help, then leave session. It'll present you with the link to the evaluation. If you want to follow up and do the evaluation later in the evening or sometime tomorrow, I'm going to type in the URL here in the chat for you to copy to your desktop or to your clipboard and follow up at a later time. Just a heads up, this is the same one we use for each one, and then we kind of wipe it clean for the next evaluation that comes up. So if you have it from a previous session, you're welcome to use it for our interaction webinar. Again, on behalf of Chris Ditzler, thank you very much for attending. A reminder that our next scheduled webinar is this coming Monday, May 6th. I will be your presenter, and Cody Stimson will be my moderator. That webinar will be focused on the Blackboard Learn, the new WebCampus Grade Center. So it's a different kind of animal than the gradebook you may have experienced. So if you have colleagues that have questions about what the gradebook may or may not offer, please be sure to enroll for that upcoming session that's this coming Monday. On behalf of us all here in online education, thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.